The deep low end bass. The deep low end bass entirely vibrating strictly through the heavy wooden bench. No need to entirely completely pull out the heavy iron or the heavy steel wrench. We settle in the heavy neighborhood disputes completely strictly with the mind, leaving the undeniable heavy and absolutely chaotic street violence completely behind. You gotta protect the heavy absolute king, standing completely entirely tall, watching the entirely undeniable heavy physical opposing pawns completely fall. The heavy knight entirely jumps completely strictly over the wooden defensive wall, answering the entirely completely absolute undeniable 99 tactical call. If you completely make a heavy blind mistake, you absolutely completely pay the price. You cannot entirely completely roll the heavy undeniable physical metropolitan dice. The heavy bishop slicing entirely strictly straight across the diagonal lane, washing away the absolutely entirely heavy completely chaotic metropolitan pain. You look your absolute undeniable completely heavy opponent strictly in the eye, knowing this heavy fair physical competition is entirely never going to die. Heavy wooden pieces strictly sliding completely across the checkerboard, fighting entirely for the absolute completely undisputed physical reward. No heavy metropolitan shortcuts, no completely entirely invisible tricks, just the absolute undeniable heavy logic, mixing strictly with the bricks. Keep the xylophone bouncing, let the high-pitched synth completely whine. We playing the heavy honest game perfectly straight down, absolute line. The heavy west coast sun completely beating directly down on the concrete square. The absolute entirely undeniable heavy 99 tactical tension floating in the air. He slides the heavy wooden rook entirely completely straight down the open file, giving me that absolute entirely confident heavy 99 physical smile. But I completely entirely see the heavy undeniable trap. He strictly tried to set the absolute greatest entirely physical 99 street counter move entirely. Yeah, I grab the heavy wooden queen, sliding her perfectly strictly across the wood, proving exactly completely how the absolute heavy game is entirely understood. Checkmate, completely entirely spoken strictly with a heavy undeniable calm voice, leading the absolute entirely completely heavy physical opponent with completely no choice. He nods his heavy head entirely completely respecting the absolute flawless move, exactly how we completely absolutely entirely strictly maintain the physical groove. We shake hands completely perfectly entirely right over the checkered battlefield where the absolute entirely undeniably clearly heavy truth is strictly revealed. The heavy wooden pieces strictly sliding completely across the checkerboard, fighting entirely for the absolute completely undisputed physical reward. No heavy metropolitan shortcuts, no completely entirely invisible tricks, just the absolute undeniable heavy logic, mixing strictly with the bricks. Keep the xylophone bouncing, let the high-pitched synth completely whine. We playing the heavy honest game perfectly straight down their absolute line. Yeah. Sitting at the heavy wooden desk underneath the midnight lamp, proving to the universe I am the undisputed heavy champ. Calculating the short circuit currents on the faded paper page, breaking completely out of the heavy metropolitan physical cage. Setting up the complex relay protection for the 10 kV lines, making entirely sure the heavy electrical grid completely shines. Mastering the power systems, taking absolute physical control, feeding the heavy ambition strictly directly into my soul. They said the heavy academic mountain was incredibly entirely steep, but I sacrificed the undeniably heavy physical hours of sleep. You gotta lay the heavy foundation before you build the massive tower, transforming the quiet midnight dreams into the undeniable power. The high voltage humming entirely perfectly matching the drum kick, moving completely smoothly, making the heavy atmosphere incredibly thick.
We chase the heavy vision completely through the darkest night,
making entirely sure the physical future is
undeniably bright.
From the empty pockets directly to the absolute
Heavy top,
the metropolitan ambition is absolutely never
gonna stop.
Yeah, we built the undisputed dreams
Strictly from the concrete floor.
unlocking exactly what
we completely been striving for.
I turn the heavy ignition on the classic Chevrolet Suburban ride, filled with the absolute undeniable heavy West Coast pride. Rolling strictly down the avenue, broadcasting the 90s, slow name, changing the entire physical architecture of the heavy street game, creating the ultimate motivation for the younger neighborhood youth, spitting the absolute undeniable heavy, completely physical truth. The heavy V8 engine rumbling exactly underneath the steel hood, making the absolute undeniably heavy classic vision completely good. We took a heavy blank canvas and painted a completely massive empire, igniting the absolute undeniably heavy and creative physical fire. When you completely trust your own heavy undeniable physical grind, you leave the entirely heavy metropolitan doubts completely behind. Cruising smoothly with the windows down, feeling the coastal breeze, putting the formerly chaotic heavy mind entirely perfectly at ease.
We chase that heavy vision completely through the darkest night.
Making entirely sure the physical future is
Undeniably bright.
from the empty pockets directly to the absolute
Heavy top,
The metropolitan ambition is absolutely never
gonna stop.
Yeah, we built the undisputed dreams,
Strictly from the concrete floor.
unlocking exactly what
We completely been striving for.
but the absolute greatest achievement absolutely ain't the paper or the degree. It's exactly what my physical eyes completely get to entirely see. When I park the heavy iron and walk strictly through the front door, exactly what I put the heavy physical work entirely completely in for. My beautiful queen sitting perfectly on the comfortable fabric couch, the absolute heavy loyalty for which my physical soul can completely vouch. Watching her favorite television series in the quiet living room glow, the absolute greatest undeniable physical peace I will entirely ever know. Planning a beautiful heavy celebration completely by the coastal estate, knowing that this heavy physical destiny is entirely
Undeniably great.
the heavy brass horns completely playing a beautiful
Soulful tune,
underneath the absolute undeniably heavy.
completely glowing moon.
You can entirely conquer the heavy grid,
In the physical street,
but the family makes the heavy.
undeniable victory, completely sweet.
Yeah, the heavy vinyl. The heavy vinyl crackle is dictating the entire rhythm of the street, making the howling autumn wind perfectly synchronized with the heavy beat. The staccato rolls bouncing entirely and undeniably strictly on the one, warming up the concrete block before the early setting of the heavy sun. Yeah, the needle strictly riding completely inside the dusty analog groove, showing the frozen metropolitan city exactly how to completely move. The classic heavy Chevy rolling by with the tinted windows rolled strictly up. I'm sitting on the wooden porch drinking hot coffee from the heavy ceramic cup. You watch the heavy gray clouds completely blanket the entire western sky, but the high-pitched synth whine is entirely keeping the neighborhood spirits high. The analog warmth completely melting the early frost strictly off the window glass. Watching the absolute beautiful heavy golden era physical minutes slowly pass. The groove is completely entirely physical, carved directly deep into the wax, supplying the entire freezing hemisphere with the undeniable heavy street facts. You hear the heavy popping and the hissing, the imperfections make it completely real, projecting exactly how the heavy autumn transition is entirely supposed to feel. The massive trees are completely naked, the heavy branches shaking in the harsh breeze, but the staccato bounce completely puts the freezing metropolitan mind at ease. We completely trading the entirely hot summer pavement for the heavy wool coat, keeping the undeniable heavy and perfect 99 bouncing rhythm afloat. The heavy vinyl crackle is dictating the entire rhythm of the street, making the howling autumn wind perfectly synchronized with the heavy beat. The staccato roads bouncing entirely and undeniably strictly on the one,
perfection.
Warming up the concrete block before the early setting of the
Heavy sun.
yeah, the needle strictly riding completely inside the dusty analog groove, showing the frozen metropolitan city exactly how to completely move. They try to completely clean the audio, stripping away the absolute heavy soul, but the physical vinyl dust completely makes the entirely broken spirit whole. We walking down the avenue, the heavy leather boots stepping strictly on the dried leaves, the crisp drum break perfectly mimicking exactly how the entire cold city breathes. It is a heavy physical soundtrack strictly for the darker skies and the shorter days, navigating perfectly entirely through the undeniably cold and windy urban maze. The deep low end sub bass entirely vibrating strictly through the frozen underground. The absolute greatest heavy physical and entirely undisputed 99 sound. I walk strictly back inside and flip the heavy black record perfectly over to the B-side, keeping it undeniably heavy and completely perfect analog physical pride. The sharp rose chords keep bouncing absolutely relentless against the freezing cold. The absolute greatest completely heavy physical autumn street story ever told. Let the rhythm completely dictate exactly how you walk across the freezing intersection, creating the absolute entirely heavy and completely undeniable physical perfection. The heavy under, yeah, the heavy asphalt is dirty, but the heavy wheat suede is entirely clean. The most undeniable physical survival tactic that the block has entirely seen. You absolutely gotta walk completely through the heavy metropolitan mud without entirely letting the heavy street dirt completely mix with your blood. Keep the heavy brass bouncing, let the high pitch sin strictly crowd. We keeping the heavy foundation entirely spotless under the smoggy sky. Yeah, they entirely try to strictly drag you completely down into the heavy gutter lane, trying to completely infect your physical mind strictly with the heavy acid rain. But the thick rubber sole entirely completely elevates the physical street stance, giving the absolutely undeniably heavy clean spirit a completely fighting chance. I see the heavy situations going completely wrong on the dark corner block, but I keep entirely moving strictly perfectly in time with the analog clock. You absolutely completely cannot let the heavy toxic environment leave a mark when you entirely strictly walking directly through the undeniable heavy dark. The heavy golden boots acting entirely completely like an absolute physical shield, navigating the undeniably heavy and entirely completely dangerous battlefield. The sharp brass entirely strictly dictating the absolute heavy bouncing pace, exactly how you completely entirely win the heavy physical metropolitan race. You brush the heavy dust completely off the suede strictly at the end of the night, proving that the entirely heavy clean physical vision is absolutely undeniably right. The heavy asphalt is dirty, but the heavy wheat suede is entirely clean. The most undeniable physical survival tactic that the block has entirely seen. You absolutely gotta walk completely through the heavy metropolitan mud without entirely letting the heavy street dirt completely mix with your blood. Keep the heavy brass bouncing, let the high peak scent strictly cry. We keeping the heavy foundation entirely spotless under the smoggy sky. It completely entirely takes an absolute heavy discipline to walk this strictly clean, preserving exactly who you entirely are behind the heavy neighborhood scene. The heavy puddles completely reflecting the entirely broken neon street signs, but I'm strictly stepping perfectly entirely between the heavy physical lines. The heavy staccato bounce completely entirely and perfectly shaking the ground. The absolutely undeniably heavy clean and entirely perfect 99 sound. They completely entirely wonder exactly how the heavy boots stay strictly fresh, while the heavy avenue entirely completely and strictly eats the physical flesh. straight down the heavily corrupted physical road. The high pitch synth completely cutting strictly through the heavy polluted air, proving that the entirely heavy clean physical resistance is permanently sitting there. You absolutely completely leave the heavy street grime strictly on the floor when you entirely step back completely inside the heavy wooden physical door. Yeah. Still watching. Yeah. Still watching the borough roll by from the back of the bus, still avoiding the drama and the midnight fuss, still letting the G-funk rhythm melt the Easter snow, still clutching the tape deck wherever I go, still catching the perfect bounce on the Brooklyn street, still matching the diesel engine with the heavy beat. We crossing over the intersection, the tires hit a deep pothole, but the worn out shock absorbers cannot disrupt the soul. The driver is hitting the brakes, picking up a ghost on the block. Everybody surviving the graveyard shit, fighting the hands of the clock. I look at the graffiti covering the brick walls outside while I take the absolute perfect rhythmic midnight ride. The West Coast centers whining, cutting through the Brooklyn chill, providing the ultimate analog musical thrill. A brother steps on with his hood up, sitting completely in silence, leaving behind the undeniable shadows of the urban violence. We all just temporary passengers moving across the grid in the dark, passing the locked iron gates of the empty neighborhood park. The volume wheel is turned up strictly to the maximum 10, waiting to reach the final avenue to rewind it again. Still watching the borough roll by from the back of the bus, still avoiding the drama and the midnight fuss, still letting the G-funk rhythm melt the eastern snow, still clutching the tape deck wherever I go, still catching the perfect bounce on the Brooklyn streets, still matching the diesel engine with the heavy beat. The magnetic tape is rolling straight towards the end of the side, dictating the exact physical rhythm of this metropolitan ride. You see the thick steam rising out of the iron manhole grates, while the heavy drum kick completely and undeniably dominates. The bus turns down Flatbush, the giant neon signs are dark, the staccato strings hitting exactly like an electrical spark. It's a perfect physical contrast, the California bouncing the cold, the greatest analog metropolitan story that was ever told. The battery light is flickering red, the power is running low, but the 96 rhythm still has a long way to go. The diesel engine roar shifting into a higher gear, while the bouncing bass line is keeping my vision crystal clear. Just a lone passenger, a plastic tape, and the concrete road, carrying the undeniable weight of the midnight street code. Walking straight down to the heavy intersection where the real physical legends meet. Carrying the undeniable heavy vocal artillery directly strictly onto the street. A close circle of thick denim, heavy leather jackets and entirely focused eyes. Underneath the completely smoggy dark and undisputed heavy western skies. The silver boombox sitting directly on the milk crate, pushing the heavy beat, providing a strictly undeniable 99 physical foundation for the feet. I step directly into the center, waiting for the heavy rhythm to strictly drop, knowing exactly that the heavy metropolitan street poetry will entirely never stop. You absolutely cannot buy the neighborhood respect with a completely empty check. You gotta risk your physical reputation and put your entire vocal neck on the deck. The clavinet bounces sharply, entirely matching the heavy racing heart rate, determining exactly who is gonna survive the undeniably strict metropolitan fate. I clear my throat, the entirely physical crowd goes absolutely and completely quiet, preparing strictly to incite an entirely undeniable heavy 99 vocal riot. The heavy concrete circle is the entirely strict, absolute, ultimate proving ground. Whether completely undeniable heavy 99 physical kings are crowned. We trade in the heavy syllables right underneath the strictly glowing street lamp light, earning the absolute heavy neighborhood respect exactly in the middle of the night. Keep the clavinet bouncing, let the high pitch synth completely whine and cry. The absolute absolute strict heavy physical street cipher is entirely never going to die. A younger brother steps completely up, strictly trying to take the heavy crown, throwing the aggressive metaphors completely up and strictly knocking them down. But he entirely stumbles off the beat, completely losing his heavy physical breath, facing the absolutely strict, entirely undeniable heavy 90s lyrical death. The crowd reacts entirely with a strict heavy collective neighborhood groan, showing exactly how ruthless it is to strictly defend the analog 99 throne. I step back completely in, perfectly catching the heavy bouncing MPC snare, unleashing the absolute entirely heavy, completely undeniable physical street flair. You gotta completely entirely dig deep, strictly into the heavy metropolitan soul to maintain the absolute strict heavy 99 physical lyrical control. We weaving a completely heavy street story, strictly out of the thin night air, proving exactly completely that the undeniable heavy physical talent is right there. No heavy studio isolation, absolutely entirely no heavy mixing board tricks, just the undeniable raw heavy vocabulary, completely strictly hitting the physical bricks. The heavy concrete circle is the entirely strict absolute ultimate proving ground, where the completely undeniable heavy 99 physical kings are crowned. We trade in the heavy syllables right underneath the strictly glowing street lamp light, earning the absolute heavy neighborhood respect exactly in the middle of the night. Keep the clavinet bouncing, let the high pitch sit, completely whine and cry. The absolute strict heavy physical street cipher is entirely never going to die. This heavy paper ain't for the street. It absolutely ain't for the show. It is going directly back to the absolute most beautiful queen I know. For every single heavy sacrifice she made, completely in the dark, I am leaving a completely undeniable heavy and beautiful physical mark. Yeah, the first real harvest belongs strictly to the heavy family tree, showing the absolute undeniable universe exactly who I am supposed to be. I walk strictly past the heavy corner where the neighborhood brothers stand. They ask me exactly what I am doing with the heavy paper, strictly in my hand. I just give them a completely silent nod, keeping my heavy physical pace, navigating completely entirely through the chaotic heavy metropolitan space. I push the heavy glass door open directly into the downtown jewelry store. Exactly what I put the heavy physical and mental labor completely in for. The glass cabinets are completely entirely shining underneath the yellow light, looking for the absolute perfectly undeniable heavy piece to make it exactly right. I spot the silver locket resting entirely on the dark velvet pad, the most entirely beautiful physical object that this neighborhood store ever had. I drop the heavy cash strictly directly onto the polished glass case, watching the absolute undeniable heavy respect strictly completely on the salesman's face. He wraps it up entirely perfectly in the heavy glossy white paper square. I step back out completely directly into the undeniable heavy summer air. This heavy paper ain't for the street. It absolutely ain't for the show. It is going directly back to the absolute most beautiful queen I know. For every single heavy sacrifice she made, completely in the dark, I am leaving a completely undeniable heavy and beautiful physical mark. Yeah, the first real harvest belongs strictly to the heavy family tree, showing the absolute undeniable universe exactly who I am supposed to be. The walk back to the physical neighborhood feels incredibly entirely short, carrying the absolute undeniable heavy, completely physical emotional support. I push the heavy wooden front door strictly open, smelling the evening meal, knowing exactly how this undeniable heavy physical moment is completely going to feel. I shake is standing entirely directly exactly by the heavy kitchen stove. The absolute center of this entirely undeniable heavy neighborhood grove. I walk up strictly behind her, entirely, completely clearing my heavy throat, holding a small white box directly inside the pocket of my heavy coats. I handed it entirely, completely over, watching her wipe her hands strictly on the towel, silencing the absolute, entirely heavy, completely undeniably metropolitan. How she unwraps the heavy paper, strictly opening the small velvet lid, realizing absolutely, completely, exactly what her undeniably young boy completely did. The heavy tears entirely, perfectly rolling strictly down her physical face, bringing the absolute heavy, completely undeniable, entirely peaceful grace. This heavy paper ain't for the street. It absolutely ain't for the show. It is going directly back to the absolute most
Beautiful queen I know.
for every single heavy sacrifice.
She made
Completely in the dark, I am leaving a completely undeniable, heavy and beautiful.
physical mark.
Yeah, the first real harvest belongs
Strictly to the heavy family tree.
showing the absolute undeniable universe exactly who I am supposed to be. She pulls me entirely, completely into the absolute heaviest physical embrace, erasing absolutely every single heavy worry completely from this physical place. I tell her this is just the absolute, completely undeniable heavy start, speaking completely, strictly from the absolute bottom of my physical heart. The heavy porch swing, completely, strictly creaking directly in the evening breeze, putting my entirely undeniable heavy physical soul completely, perfectly at ease. You absolutely realize exactly why you grind so entirely, completely hard, navigating the absolute complex angles of the heavy metropolitan yard. It ain't about the completely selfish glory or the heavy street fame. It's about absolutely, entirely, completely elevating the physical family name. The jazz flute completely crying out an absolute, undeniable, beautiful sound. The absolute heaviest, completely peaceful vibration, strictly,
Completely on the ground.
I sit down at the kitchen table,
Completely ready for the heavy warm plate.
knowing absolutely, entirely that this physical
Metropolitan destiny is great.
Yeah. Climbing, yeah, climbing directly out of the shadows, strictly into the blinding sun. The heavy physical marathon is absolutely, entirely completely begun. From the dusty basement floor to the absolute highest mountain peak, finding the exact undeniable language that the heavy champions speak. Yeah, we trading the concrete ceiling for the infinite open sky. Watching the heavy physical metropolitan doubts entirely fly by. I take the heavy master tape and manually duplicate 100 cassettes, placing my absolute, entirely undeniable heavy physical neighborhood bets. Loading the heavy cardboard boxes right into the classic Chevy trunk, ready to absolutely, completely distribute this heavy West Coast G-funk. Standing on the corner of the boulevard, handing them entirely out by hand, executing the absolute, completely heavy, undeniable master plan. Some cats completely throw the plastic shell right into the street dirt, but the heavy rejection absolutely, entirely, completely doesn't hurt, because later that heavy midnight, I hear a classic car rolling slowly past, playing my heavy instrumental, entirely proving it was strictly built to last. The deep mo bass entirely rattling the heavy metal license plate, knowing absolutely, completely that this physical destiny is undeniably great. The heavy street is entirely absorbing the absolute physical sound, lifting the heavy underground rhythm completely, strictly off the ground. Yeah, come on, climbing directly out of the shadows, strictly into the blinding sun. The heavy physical marathon has absolutely, entirely, completely begun. From the dusty basement floor to the absolute highest mountain peak, finding the the exact undeniable language that the heavy champions speak. Yeah, we trade in that concrete ceiling for the infinite open sky. Watching the heavy physical metropolitan doubts entirely fly by. The heavy physical momentum completely starts to rapidly and undeniably build. The absolute heavy street prophecy is entirely, strictly, completely fulfilled. The local promoters completely blowing up the rotary telephone line. An absolute physical signal that the heavy universe is entirely mine. We traded the heavy underground house parties for the massive theater doors, leaving behind a heavy, entirely, completely cracked basement, concrete floors. Walking directly down the heavy, dimly lit backstage corridor hall, answering the absolute, undeniable, heavy, professional, physical call. I can completely hear the massive, heavy crowd absolutely roaring, strictly outside, swelling my physical chest entirely with the undeniable West Coast pride. The roadies are pushing the heavy, massive wooden speaker crates across the wood, making entirely sure the absolute heavy audio translation is completely good. I adjust the heavy collar on my jacket, breathing the electric air, leaving entirely behind absolutely every single heavy physical despair. Climbing directly out of the shadows, strictly into the blinding sun. The heavy physical marathon is absolutely, entirely, completely begun. From the dusty basement floor to the absolute highest mountain peak, finding the exact undeniable language that the heavy champions speak. Yeah, we trade in the concrete ceiling for the infinite open sky, watching the heavy physical metropolitan doubts entirely fly by. The heavy velvet curtain completely, entirely, strictly rises up incredibly high, revealing a massive sea of people directly under the indoor artificial sky. The heavy stadium lights completely blinding my physical eyes. The absolute greatest, undisputed, heavy metropolitan physical prize. I grip the heavy metal microphone, completely stepping strictly to the front edge, fulfilling the absolute, undeniably heavy, completely physical neighborhood pledge. The heavy snare drum entirely echoing strictly across the massive room, completely, entirely banishing the heavy underground physical gloom. 10,000 heavy hands, strictly, entirely waving exactly in the air. Hey. The absolute. Yeah, absolute. The absolute heaviest currency is the breath, completely leaving your chest, putting your physical honor to the entirely ultimate and absolute final test. When the 5 fingers lock in the heavy hands, entirely, perfectly shake, that is a solid iron bond that the heavy metropolitan block absolutely cannot break. Keep the hammer and organ bouncing, let the low brass completely, entirely blow. Your physical word is the absolute, undeniable, entirely heavy truth. Yeah, you know, you got the heavy smooth talkers trying to completely navigate the urban maze, selling the absolute, completely, entirely empty promises through the metropolitan haze. They completely, entirely fold under the pressure. The absolute minute the temperature drops, exactly where they're entirely fake and completely fragile neighborhood reputation stops. But an absolute heavy 99 veteran, completely, entirely, strictly stands tall, answering the incredibly, entirely dangerous and strictly heavy physical neighborhood call. If I entirely, completely, strictly tell you the heavy package is arriving at noon, you can completely, absolutely, entirely set your heavy analog watch strictly by the moon. The high-pitched synth is whining, cutting completely straight through the cheap street lies, revealing exactly, completely who is entirely honorable underneath the dark disguises. You completely, entirely damage your own name strictly once, and the heavy block remembers, turning your entirely heavy physical street legacy completely straight into the cold embers. The deep rolling bass line is completely vibrating, the heavy rubber soles on the ground, protecting the absolute, completely pristine iron honor of the heavy West Coast sound. The absolute heaviest currency is the breath, completely leaving your chest, putting your physical honor to the entirely ultimate and absolute final test. When the 5 fingers lock in the heavy hands, entirely, perfectly shaped. That is a solid iron bond that the heavy metropolitan block absolutely cannot break. Keep the hammer and organ bouncing, let the low brass completely entirely blur. Your physical word is the absolute undeniable, entirely heavy truth. You know, the heavy leather entirely, completely rustling strictly in the freezing evening wind. Exactly where the absolutely entirely heavy and permanent physical loyalties begin. I teach the completely younger generation exactly how to entirely build the respect. Showing them strictly completely what an absolute firm and heavy physical grip projects. You completely entirely look the man directly in the eyes, you absolutely never look away. That is the completely undeniably flawless iron law of the 99 physical deck. The heavy NPC drum break is perfectly strictly hitting absolutely right on the one, stealing the completely entirely physical neighborhood agreements strictly under the sun. You completely strictly keep your physical circle incredibly tight, surrounded by the real, the absolute greatest, completely entirely heavy street philosophy that you can strictly feel. The sharp staccato organ entirely perfectly carrying the completely absolute heavyweight, securing the entirely absolute undeniably completely flawless 99 physical fate. We completely strictly leaving the heavy paperwork entirely locked inside the desk drawer, because the absolute physical 99 spoken honor entirely and completely settles the score.
Yeah.
We breaking, we breaking.
Yeah.
We breaking. We breaking the heavy rusted chain, completely rewriting the family name. Stepping entirely out of the shadow, changing the absolute physical game. I'm standing completely, strictly right here. I absolutely ain't walking away.
Walking away.
Guiding the younger footsteps straight through the absolute heavy gray. Keep the bass plucks bouncing.
Let the high-pitched synth completely cry.
The absolute undisputed father figures
Standing incredibly strong and high.
Yeah. Now I'm completely strictly assembling the heavy wooden crib with my own two hands. Planting the absolute undeniable physical roots directly in these western lands. I ain't gonna be the phantom ghost that completely strictly fades into the metropolitan wind. This is exactly where the absolute heavy 99 generational healing begins. I'll be sitting on the heavy front porch, waiting for the yellow school bus to arrive, making absolutely sure that the innocent entirely physical spirit continues to survive. The rusty swing chain squeaking perfectly exactly on the heavy drum break rhythm.
I'm taking all the heavy physical knowledge I earned and passing it strictly to him.
When the dark clouds completely entirely roll in and the heavy thunder starts to crash, I'll be the absolute solid iron roof, completely protecting the most valuable physical stash. No empty promises, no entirely completely fragile excuses whispered in the dark, leaving a completely undeniable and heavy protected permanent 99 mark. The deep rolling bass vibrating right through the thick rubber soles of my shoes, completely and entirely canceling out the heavy generational fatherless blues. We
breaking the heavy rusted chain,
completely rewriting the
family name,
stepping entirely
out of the shadow,
changing
the absolute physical game.
I'm standing completely strictly right here.
I absolutely ain't walking away.
Hey, guiding
the younger footsteps
straight through the absolute
heavy gray.
Keep the bass plucks bouncing.
Let the high-pitched synth completely cry.
The absolute undisputed father figure,
standing incredibly strong and high.
Yeah, you completely entirely gotta show up when the heavy physical temperature strictly drops. Being the absolute undeniable shield right before the heavy neighborhood trouble pops. I'm teaching the absolute importance of a heavy firm handshake and looking straight in the eye, beneath the completely undeniably heavy and entirely smoggy western sky. I'm reading the heavy cardboard book strictly under the warm and yellow reading light, tucking the completely safe and protected generation entirely perfectly in for the night. The high-pitched synth whining directly over the completely silent and sleepy street. The absolute greatest physical heavy victory that the metropolitan grid could ever meet. I completely entirely took the heavy pain of the absolute empty kitchen chair and transformed it entirely completely into the absolute heaviest
physical love and care.
The 99 aesthetic ain't just strictly about the heavy gold and the
classic ride. It's entirely completely about maintaining
the absolute heavy,
undeniable family pride.
we completely
Strictly walking side by side,
dialing heavily,
paved Metropolitan Avenue,
showing the absolute entire Western Hemisphere.
exactly what a real heavy father can do.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. A classic Chevy rolls incredibly slowly down the avenue. Headlights cutting the dark, leaving a heavy temporary shadow completely right across the neighborhood park. I watch the heavy chrome wire wheel spin, translating the motion directly into a rhyme, locking the physical metropolitan energy perfectly into the analog time. The high-pitched synth whine is crying directly over the deep bassline groove, dictating exactly how a heavyweight lyricist is entirely supposed to move. You absolutely gotta sit in the complete silence to hear what the concrete has to say before the heavy rising sun washes the undeniable heavy mystery entirely away. My hands are covered in the dark gray smudges directly from the wooden leg, validating exactly every single heavy and completely truthful word I strictly said. The pages are completely filled with the cross-outs, the heavy physical edits and the pain, standing entirely, completely, undeniably strong against the metaphorical rain. This staccato guitar completely dictating the absolute, undeniable heavy pace, cementing the physical legacy directly inside this completely heavy western space. Underneath the yellow halo of the heavy buzzing street lamp light, carving out the bouncing rhythm in the middle of the dark night. The worn leather notebook, catching every single physical word I drop. The staccato chords are hitting and the heavy ink will absolutely never stop. Yeah, strictly putting the graphite perfectly down on the line page, channeling the ultimate heavy 99 physical West Coast. Say, they completely want the fast glory, they want the heavy gold and the loud flash, but I'm investing my physical soul strictly into this in the log heavy cash. When you read these completely wrinkled pages 20 entirely long years from now, you will absolutely perfectly understand the heavy 99 where and the exact how. The staccato guitar chords keep bouncing, completely relentless and incredibly sharp, playing the heavy metropolitan grid exactly like a completely physical street harp. The sodium street lamp is strictly acting as the completely ultimate stage spotlight, illuminating the undeniable heavy thoughts that I absolutely completely have to write. I reach the bottom of the page, the heavy physical paragraph app is finally entirely done. A masterpiece completely created strictly before the heavy rising of the morning sun. The heavy drum break completely shaking entirely solid and physical ground. The absolute most authentic and completely heavy undeniable West Coast sound. I blow the graphite dust strictly off the paper of mine, the undeniable geometric lines, exactly where the absolute heavy and completely focused street mentality strictly shines. Underneath the yellow halo of the heavy buzzing street lamp light, carving out the bouncing rhythm in the middle of the dark night. The worn leather notebook, catching every single physical word I drop. The staccato chords are hitting and the heavy ink will absolutely never stop. Yeah, strictly putting the graphite perfectly down on the line page, channeling the ultimate heavy 99 physical West Coast. Say. Yeah. Just crack it up. Yeah. Walking entirely straight out into the heavy metropolitan freezing night. The great concrete building strictly blocking out the absolute starry light. The undeniable heavy winter wind completely biting right at the physical face. Trying to entirely freeze the spirit strictly inside this unforgiving space. But I got the heavy leather jacket zipped completely right up to the chin, knowing exactly where the absolute heavy physical 99 heat begins. I pull the heavy composition notebook strictly out of the inside pocket, launching the absolute boiling hot syllables entirely like a heavy rocket. The sharp muted guitar plucks bouncing perfectly against the frozen brick, keeping the heavy undeniable metropolitan blood completely incredibly thick. You entirely drop the heavy iron rhymes directly onto the frozen ground, watching the thick ice completely melt strictly from the absolute heavy sound. The heavy breath looking entirely like thick white smoke in the freezing air, proving the undeniable physical fire is completely and permanently right there. The heavy concrete jungle is entirely freezing completely to the absolute bone, but we warming up the block, sitting strictly on the analog 99 throne. Dropping the boiling hot poetry completely straight onto the freezing street, melting the heavy metropolitan ice strictly with the undeniable physical beat. Keep the muted guitar bouncing, let the high-pitched synth completely scream. We keeping the heavy fire strictly alive entirely inside the physical dream. The yellow street lamps completely strictly shivering in the heavy cold breeze, watching the absolute entire metropolitan avenue entirely and completely freeze. But we standing completely strictly on the corner, building the heavy cipher tight, generating the absolute entirely undeniable heavy heat in the middle of the night. The deep crawling moog bass completely vibrating strictly through the frozen boots, watering the completely undeniable heavy and physical golden era street roots. Every single strictly spoken heavy word is an absolute entirely burning cold, protecting the completely undeniable heavy 99 physical street soul. They completely want the heavy neighborhood entirely locked strictly inside the ice, but we entirely completely rolling the heavy boiling hot metropolitan dice. The heavy reverb on the ring shot entirely completely echoing down the empty block, defeating the absolute freezing temperature and the relentless heavy analog clock. The physical vocal delivery entirely strictly acts like a heavy iron furnace blast, making absolutely sure the entirely heavy bouncing rhythm is completely built to last. The heavy concrete jungle is entirely freezing completely to the absolute bone, but we warming up the block, sitting strictly on the analog 99 throne. Dropping the boiling hot poetry completely straight onto the freezing street, melting the heavy metropolitan ice strictly with the undeniable physical beat. Keep the muted guitar bouncing, let the high-pitched synth completely scream. We keeping the heavy fire strictly alive entirely inside the physical dream. We dropping. Yeah. We dropping the heavy poetry directly onto the cold and windy autumn block. Moving strictly in sync with the dusty boom bap and the analog clock. The yellow leaves falling incredibly heavy across the gray metropolitan brick, keeping the chop piano bouncing undeniably and absolutely thick. Yeah. Surviving the freezing breeze completely with the heavy ink in the pad. The most authentic street symphony that the Eastern Seaboard ever entirely had. Yeah, the silver boombox sitting directly right on the stoop of the classic brownstone stair, pushing a completely thick magnetic cassette tape vibe directly into the freezing air. The rhythm is undeniably bouncy but coated entirely in a heavy layer of street grit, exactly where the absolute undisputed heavyweight lyricists completely and strictly sit. We throwing the heavy physical rhymes back and forth in a tight corner cipher, every single metaphor hitting incredibly sharp, exactly like a metropolitan sniper. The heavy vinyl crackle acting perfectly like a thick wool blanket over the snare, proving that the golden era spirit is completely and permanently breathing. right there. You absolutely gotta project your voice loud enough to cut right through the howling breeze, putting the completely restless and freezing physical urban mind entirely at ease. The staccato chops bouncing perfectly, carrying the absolute undeniable New York weight, dictating the flawless bouncing rhythm of the entire Eastern physical state. We trading the heavy lowriders entirely for the yellow taxi cab strictly on the street, but the incredibly sharp bouncing foundation is entirely permanently and absolutely complete. We dropping the heavy poetry directly onto the cold and windy autumn block, moving strictly in sync with the dusty boom bap and the analog clock. The yellow leaves falling incredibly heavy across the gray metropolitan brick, keeping the chop piano bouncing undeniably and absolutely thick. Yeah, surviving the freezing breeze completely with the heavy ink and the pad. The most authentic street symphony that the Eastern Seaboard ever entirely had. The heavy sun is dropping incredibly early, hiding directly behind the massive skyscrapers, leaving the absolute heavy city strictly entirely to the night shift physical capers. The yellow halogen street lamps buzzing completely over the wet asphalt road, watching the completely undeniable and heavy history of the neighborhood slowly unfold. I take the wooden pencil, scratching the gray graphite heavily directly against the page, releasing the absolutely beautiful and poetic metropolitan physical 96 rage. You mix the perfectly heavy bouncy rhythm entirely with the eastern winter chill, creating the completely unprecedented and undeniably raw analog musical thrill. The upright bass is walking perfectly smoothly entirely underneath the chopped keys, ignoring the entirely heavy drop in temperature and the absolutely freezing degrees. This is exactly completely how you build a permanent bridge directly across the physical map, respecting the heavy staccato bounce while absolutely honoring the heavy dusty boom bap. The massive iron bridge is completely connecting the borough strictly across the freezing dark water, exactly what the undeniably old school heavy physical street veterans perfectly taught. We dropping the heavy poetry directly onto the cold and windy autumn block, moving strictly in sync with the dusty boom bap and the analog clock. The yellow leaves falling incredibly heavy across the gray metropolitan brick, keeping the chop piano bouncing undeniably and absolutely thick. Surviving the freezing breeze completely with the heavy ink and the pad. The most authentic street symphony that the Eastern Seaboard ever entirely had. Elevate the mental state. Elevate the mental state. Leave the heavy street drama completely behind. Unlocking the iron cages with the absolute sharpest state of mind. Trading the dark, dangerous corner strictly for the bright. Reading light, building up the intellect, keeping the 99 future perfectly tight. We bouncing right on the rhythm, but the vocabulary is incredibly deep. Waking up the vital knowledge that the violent avenue put to sleep. Yeah, I got a mountain of heavy encyclopedias resting right on the wooden desk, putting the chaotic 99 physical street survival to the ultimate test. They rolling the dice on the pavement, risking everything they ever own, while I'm absorbing the heavy literature, building a permanent mental throne. No gang colors on my back, just a heavy black ink on the white page, operating perfectly like a focus, undisputed West Coast sage. Every time I finish a chapter, it feels exactly like winning a heavy fight, defeating the ignorance that tries to swallow the metropolitan night. The high-pitched synth is whining, cutting through the silence of the room, sweeping away the undeniable and heavy neighborhood physical doom. My brother tried to hand me a package, told me to hustle on the evening shift. I told him I'm entirely busy cultivating a much more permanent gift. The true gangsters of this era are the ones who completely own their brain, walking perfectly dry straight through the heavy metaphorical rain. You absorb the philosophy, the history, and the mathematics of the earth, realizing the absolute undeniable magnitude of your own physical worth. Elevate the mental state, leave the heavy street drama completely behind. Unlocking the iron cages with the absolute sharpest state of mind. Trading the dark, dangerous this corner strictly for the bright reading light. Building up the intellect, keeping the 99 future perfectly tight. We bouncing right on the rhythm, but the vocabulary is incredibly deep. Waking up the vital knowledge that the violent avenue put to sleep. The paper rustles perfectly in time with the crisp and heavy MPC snare, spreading the undisputed wisdom directly into the cold night air. We transforming the block, replacing the shattered glass with the open books, changing the entirely harsh reality in the way the entire neighborhood looks. You see the system wants you entirely trapped inside a heavy concrete cell, but reading the heavy literature breaks that absolutely terrifying spell. I highlight the important paragraphs with the bright yellow marker pen, refusing to ever fall strictly back into the destructive street cycle again. The bouncing acoustic guitar chords keep driving the positive message home, proving you absolutely don't have to navigate this dangerous grid alone. Pass the pace the back to the younger generation sitting on the front porch, handing over the ultimate 99 intellectual and heavy flaming torch. The rhythm is undeniably smooth, but the message is incredibly and purely raw, overwriting the old violent and completely broken neighborhood law. When you elevate your vocabulary, you elevate your entire physical space, winning the absolute most important 99 metropolitan human race. Elevate, elevate, I lay down the absolute, entirely heavy black outline, perfectly straight and incredibly thick. The hiss and spray nozzle, completely synchronizing with the heavy drum kick. You gotta move your wrist completely smoothly, dancing perfectly entirely with the wall, answering the completely undeniably heavy 99 physical underground call. I filling in the massive heavy block letters completely entirely with the bright crimson red, extracting the absolute undeniable visual truth completely straight out of the physical head. The heavy fumes completely entirely rising perfectly straight up into the dark night air, proving that the absolute heavy physical metropolitan talent is entirely right there. Suddenly a bright yellow flashlight beam completely entirely cut strictly through the dark. The transit security completely entirely trying to strictly erase the heavy physical mark. We grab the heavy metal cans, sprinting entirely completely right down the gravel track with the completely absolute undeniably heavy 99 wind perfectly strictly at our back. The deep low and bass entirely shaking the completely heavy ground beneath our shoes, surviving the absolute completely entirely unforgiving heavy physical metropolitan blues. We bringing the heavy liquid pigment directly strictly to the dead concrete, transforming the entirely broken skyline perfectly right from the dark street. The heavy aerosol mist floating completely straight under the yellow moon, painting the undeniable heavy physical masterpiece completely immune. Keep the vibraphone bouncing tight, let the high-pitched synths completely cry. We making the heavy gray architecture absolutely entirely touch the sky. The heavy yellow sun completely entirely strictly rises perfectly over the eastern bridge, illuminating the completely entirely heavy physical color strictly on the concrete ridge. The morning commuters completely entirely strictly pressing their faces entirely against the glass, watching the absolutely completely undeniably heavy physical masterpiece perfectly pass. The entirely absolute heavy dull gray monotony is completely strictly broken entirely in half, making the absolutely completely heavy and undeniable 99 concrete strictly laugh. We didn't entirely completely ask for the absolute heavy physical gallery permission. We completely entirely strictly executed the absolute undeniable midnight physical mission. The heavy city completely absolutely entirely tries to wash the absolute physical pain away, but the completely undeniably heavy physical 99 legends are strictly built to stay. The high-pitched synth perfectly entirely whining directly strictly over the waking town. We entirely completely absolutely successful successfully past the heavy visual physical crown. The hissing valve, completely, strictly, entirely phased perfectly, exactly into the morning breeze. Putting the absolute, entirely, completely heavy physical metropolitan mind perfectly at ease. We bring in the heavy liquid pigment directly, strictly to the dead concrete, transforming the entirely broken skyline perfectly right from the dark street. The heavy aerosol mist floating completely straight under the yellow moon, painting the undeniable heavy physical masterpiece, completely immune. Keep the vowel form bouncing tight, let the high pitch synth completely cry. We making the heavy gray architecture absolutely entirely touch the sky. Yeah. Bring it. We entire. We entirely strictly lifting the heavy wooden crates directly in the afternoon heat. Paying the absolute heavy physical price completely, strictly for the bouncing beat. Trading the thick envelope of green cash entirely for the midnight studio time. Pouring the heavy physical metropolitan exhaustion completely, strictly into the rhyme. Keep the wordlets a bouncing, let the high-pitched synth completely whine and cry. The absolute undeniable heavy analog street hustle is completely never going to die. The loud metal whistle finally blows. The heavy physical industrial daytime shift is strictly done. Standing completely, entirely victorious directly underneath the absolutely setting western sun. The boss hands over the thick brown envelope, completely, strictly filled entirely with the cash. Adding the entirely heavy physical reward directly, strictly to the undeniable studio stash. I wash the heavy warehouse dirt completely, strictly off my entirely callous working hands. The absolute hardest working, entirely independent brother, strictly in these western lands. I drop the heavy iron transmission in the drive, cruising entirely strictly down the avenue, knowing exactly completely what the heavy 99 analog magnetic tape is going to do. Pulling strictly entirely up to the heavy soundproof door directly at the back of the lot, giving the entirely absolute heavy recording engineer exactly completely what I got. He counts the heavy paper knot in his head, entirely strictly powering up the mixing board. The absolute undeniable completely heavy physical 99 analog musical reward. You gotta break your completely heavy physical back directly, entirely in the harsh daylight to completely, strictly own the entirely heavy undeniable audio masterpiece of the night. We entirely strictly lifting the heavy wooden crates directly in the afternoon heat, paying the absolute heavy physical price completely, strictly for the bouncing beat. Trading the thick envelope of green cash entirely for the midnight studio time. Pouring the heavy physical metropolitan exhaustion completely, strictly into the rhyme. Keep the wordlets a bouncing, let the high-pitched synth completely whine and cry. The absolute undeniable heavy analog street hustle is completely never going to die. I step directly into the isolation booth, completely, strictly pulling the heavy foam door, leaving the heavy physical warehouse exhaustion completely, entirely right on the floor. The engineer entirely strictly threads the brown magnetic tape directly onto the heavy reel, capturing exactly completely how the absolute undeniable heavy metropolitan street hustle feels. The red recording light completely, strictly flashes entirely bright inside the dark room, sweeping away the absolutely entirely heavy, completely physical metropolitan gloom. I grab the heavy metal microphone stand, gripping it entirely, strictly, completely tight, unleashing the absolute heavy physical street poetry directly, entirely, strictly into the night. The staccato bounce is hitting perfectly, the deep bass entirely shaking the studio glass, watching the entirely heavy physical pain of the daytime labor completely, entirely pass. You absolutely, completely cannot buy the specific heavy undeniable physical authenticity. It is entirely forged perfectly, strictly in the heavy, completely unrelenting physical city. When the heavy session entirely, completely wraps up exactly at the early morning dawn. The absolute greatest, completely heavy 99 physical analog street classic is born.